call Highfill Planning Commission meeting to order. We will do roll call first. Do we have Wayne?
I'm here.
Steve?
Yep.
Speaking for Jay.
Yeah, Molly Spears.
I'm Molly. And Alex is absent. Dawn is absent and Megan is here. So the new business we're going to discuss today is Garver introductory meeting. So we'll just kick off right into it. Yeah, go for it.
I'm Juliet. Thank you. I'm Juliet Rickey with Garver, and I'm the urban planning leader there. And I'm going to be working with y'all on on your comprehensive plan updates. Sometimes I call it a vision plan, just because I feel like sometimes that resonates more with the citizens. They understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to create a vision for your city for the future. But it's called a comprehensive land use plan in the state statute. So if I use those two words interchangeably, we're all talking about the same thing. Good. We're sharing a computer here. Watch the phone see. Mostly you'll be seeing me, my colleague Courtney McNair. We always put two people on a project, at least, so that in case I'm sick or something like that happens, she'll stand in for me, and she'll come to some of the meetings as well. She's not with me tonight. She's actually at another city meeting tonight. And she also works at our Northwest Arkansas office. Behind the scenes that you'll meet some of the time, we have other staff that are going to be working on this as well. But another urban planner in our office, as well as a couple of urban planners in our Central Arkansas office that provide support for us. And then our municipal transportation engineering team, you see them listed. You'll see them at some of the meetings as well, especially when we start talking about the master street plan and utility infrastructure. We'll have a professional engineer here as well. We have GIS services. We'll be doing some mapping during this, and so you probably won't ever see those people, but they'll be creating the maps that we work on together. And then public involvement group of people that will work to do the website and surveys and things like that as we go along as well. I'd like to know just a little bit about you. I'm going to be back and forth. We'll kind of go through the schedule and, kind of what the stages of this project are. We'll be back to you several times. I think we have 5 meetings that are budgeted for throughout the process. We'll be coming back to you, for feedback and to talk through certain parts of the plan. And so it would be helpful to me to just get to know a little bit about you, kind of understand how long you've been on the Planning Commission, why you decided to be on the Planning Commission, what you enjoy about it, and what you think the challenges are. So if you wouldn't mind just going really quick, you don't have to answer all the questions, but just give me a brief introduction to you. That'd be great.
Let me start.
Yeah.
Well, I've been on the Planning Commission about 7 months now, I guess. My wife and I moved to this area in August of 2023. And so this is where we're made home now. I chose to be on the Planning Commission, or asked to be. My background, I was an attorney for the Planning Commission, Kansas City, Kansas, and worked with their planning department for about 5 years, I guess. And so my background is I'm an attorney and a district judge for 25 years in Kansas City. And so this is an area that I've worked with and been active in before. I think Highfill is in a spot of being great to see where we're going to go. And that the Planning Commission can be a very important part of making that, with the help of the people, to determine which way we go and what we look like in 10 years and what we look like in 20 years. I mean, we're growing so damn fast that I think we need to do that, or we're going to lose control of what we are. And I think that's the most challenging part of it too, is not to lose the control of where we want to be, what we want it to be, as opposed to letting natural growth go.
Right, right. Oh, that's great. Thank you.
My name is Steve Lloyd. I'm guessing going into second year or third, I'm not sure. A while. Reason I'm on the planning commission, I was asked to join by mayor, a couple mayors ago, I guess. Michelle Reed asked me. And I mean, I own property here in town. I've been here 15 years. I'm not nearly as good as he is. I'd say all this stuff. I live here and I thought it was important to be up here if I could, and I didn't actually expect them to put me on the commission, but here I am.
Yeah.
Now you can't get rid of me. That's all I've got.
Okay.
So my name is Megan Mayer. I've been on the planning commission, I think for 6 years. It was before COVID, so thereabouts. I was basically just asked to be kind of like, Steve was just asked to be on the planning commission. Probably the best thing about it is, like Dwayne said, just watching the city grow, but that's also the most challenging part because there's, coming from a farming background and that's part of why we moved out here, almost a decade ago. And then I lived here for about 5 years prior to that. I'd like to figure out how we can keep our farming community feel and still experience the growth and try to keep the residents, that's been here for a long time so they still feel like it's home.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the most challenging part from my perspective is, figuring out those balances.
Yeah. Okay, those are great answers. And I guess I should tell you a little bit more about myself. So I've been a planner for 22 years, which makes me feel really old. We'll just move on. But for the first 14 years of it, I was in the public sector and I worked as a planner and a planning director, directly for cities and counties. And then I came to the private sector and have been doing consulting since then, but doing it with cities and counties because it's what I like to do and it's the side of the table I'm used to sitting on and kind of what I understand best. And so that's what I do now. I work with a lot of cities in Northwest Arkansas on all sorts of things. We do comprehensive planning like this, or we might do like just a special area, part of town planning, transportation planning, like the master street plan that we're going to do with this. And then we also write subdivision and zoning codes and kind of everything in between. We do some development review for cities. We've done a little bit for Highfill. When these big projects come in, understanding kind of how they're going to impact things. And so that's, I guess, kind of my history. I like working for cities a lot. I really enjoyed working for the public side of things. I think it's really important. One of the reasons I got into planning was because I feel like it's a way to really make, a meaningful impact on the communities that you work in, because everybody has a community that's home for them. I think that's really important, that they all be quality places. I will say that just, from the visiting I've done with the mayor and Jeremy and Wayne, I think a lot of things that you're experiencing are the same things, not exactly the same, but very similar things that a lot of the smaller cities in Northwest Arkansas are all experiencing, kind of in the same general time frame. Just like you said, you moved here for a reason. You love these parts of your town that have a small town feel. You don't want to lose that, and yet, you have development knocking at your door. And a lot of times people say, well, why don't we just stop development or whatever? And it's just really, it's not something you can do. I mean, honestly, I got 2 attorneys and everything, they say it better than me, but it's the United States of America. People have property rights, And you can't just not let people, do anything with their property. But you can guide growth and look at different types of land uses, and different ways to arrange, the development as it grows to help be the city that you want it to be, instead of just letting it happen to you. And so that's why I'm here, and I assume that's why, you want to work with me. And I'll just tell you right now, there's no perfect plans, just like everything else in life. There's no perfect solutions, but I do think that from the planning process that we're about to go through, you're going to find some new ways to look at things that you probably haven't before. A lot of the same things that you've probably been talking about, amongst each other in a planning commission meetings, and with the public, those are going to come up. We're all going to revisit them. I do think that there are positive things that come out of every plan. I think it's important to me that we keep in our minds, we want to do visionary and innovative things, but we want to also keep in mind that you want them to actually be implementable, right? Because if we can't implement the plan, then it's worthless, right? So those are kind of things I would say to keep in mind as we go through this. I do think there's slated to be quite a bit of public involvement. I see we have some of the public here tonight. We'll talk about those chances for public involvement, but like you heard me say, a lot of the meetings, that we have along the way, even if they're not, a formal public input meeting that's set up specifically that way, there are going to be meetings with the planning commission, which are always, public meetings for everybody to hear. And I do think, just like the slide says, that really cities are the best they can be when they are created by everybody. Not everybody's going to be happy with 100% of the decisions that are made, but again, I don't feel like that's any different than the rest of life, but having input from, as many people as possible who live here or work here, or own property here, I think that is important, and we'll take into consideration what is said. And I'll say, if y'all stop me anytime if you have questions or want to make a comment, from the planning commission. So what do we want to achieve overall? We want to create a comprehensive plan that reflects the vision and future goals for development and redevelopment in the city. And then at this meeting tonight, what we're going to do is try to develop an understanding of what the comprehensive plan and the plan development process is. Lots of people say, why do we need a plan? To me, like planning, land use planning, infrastructure planning, all of those types of things. Again, I know they can be touchy topics and people can get emotional about them because a lot of times you're talking about things that are near and dear to people's hearts. You're talking about their homes and their day-to-day life, and I absolutely understand that. And so a lot of times I feel like we'll run into pressure from people to not do a plan or not update the plan. And while I understand that because there's fear and emotion involved, I would just say I don't think it's the answer. When I talk to people, I talk to them a lot about it. It's kind of like planning for your retirement, right? You don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? But you have tools that tell you, kind of roughly what your income is now and what you may need your income to be in the future, right? And the things that you're going to need to move forward. And so you make a plan the best you can, right? To be able to move into the future so that you can feel good about having direction in your own life, right? For where you're going. And I think planning, land use planning, city planning is much the same thing. It's not going to be perfect. We don't have crystal balls. There could be another, you brought up COVID, could be another COVID tomorrow, right? None of us can do anything about that. But, we can do the best we can with the information that we have at hand. And I think it would be silly to just let it happen to you. And I also think that where we're at in Northwest Arkansas right now, and I'm sure you felt it as a planning commission, the development game itself has changed a little bit here in the last like 3 years. We now have national home builders here, whereas before the previous 19 years, I guess, that I worked in Northwest Arkansas, you know, we just had regional and local developers. And the national home builders, there's nothing wrong with them. I'm not trying to say that at all. In fact, in some ways, I think that there are a lot of pros that come with them. And one of them is they have more capital, right? And when they move, they can do things that can be more beneficial for your community. You may be getting better products in some respects for your cities than you got before. I definitely don't think it's a con, but what it does mean is that they move a lot faster. And the developments I keep seeing are getting substantially larger than they were when it was local and regional developers. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that because things are going to happen more quickly and be more impactful as they happen, then it's even more important to not sit back, you know, and just kind of let things happen to you, because the things that can happen quickly, and they can have, you know, bigger impacts on the city as a whole. And I'm not saying that as, again, I'm not trying to like scare you or anything. I'm just, this is the reality. It's where we are, you know, as a region in Northwest Arkansas. So why do we plan? We're preparing for that future. Money, right? There's fiscal pieces to this. How the city grows, right? I know right now you've got multiple water and wastewater projects happening, right? As a city, you know, the infrastructure that you're building is going to be directly tied to the development it serves. And, you know, how many taps you have into that water line, you know, equals how much money and revenue you're going to have coming in to pay for that infrastructure. And that's a pretty simplistic way of looking at it, but it does all work hand in hand, right? And the city has to find some way to think about money in the future, the infrastructure that you're taking on as a city as you develop, right? You're accepting subdivision streets, you're accepting water lines, you're accepting, you know, storm drainage infrastructure. All those things become something that the city keeps and maintains over time. And so, again, how those are developed, the standards that you have for infrastructure, we'll talk about that, you know, kind of as we go through this process, as well as the way that the infrastructure is configured. All those impact kind of the monetary piece of things over time. So we want to think about those. Hard lessons, usually I get called, usually when they call me to come work somewhere, it's not because, you know, everything has been daisies and sunshine, you know, and everybody's living blissfully, because they don't need me. But there's hard lessons, right? Things have happened that, you know, that are changing Highfill, right, and the way it's situated. You got multiple things happening, I think, here at this time. Like this part of Benton County is like one of the fastest growing parts, you know, of Benton County. This Highfill, Centerton, Bentonville, you know, Southwest Bentonville area, growing super fast. And so again, things are happening and people want to get a handle on them, just like y'all are saying, that's your biggest challenge. And then hopefully we're all here because of love of community, just, you know, for the same reasons that y'all mentioned. It's your home. There are things there that have intrinsic value to you that you do not want to see go away. And you want to find some way to embrace that change and hold on to those as much as you can while you're doing it. So what we want to create is a cohesive land use vision for the city's future. And through this process too, we'll create kind of a consensus of what current needs and future goals are for the city. And we'll talk about things as far as looking at them in a short, mid, and long-term goals. I usually say that the planning horizon for these is thinking out 20 years. And I don't think that's a bad thing to do. I think that we should think out 20 years, but with the knowledge that you're probably going to need to update your plan every 5 years, because again, we don't have the crystal ball. Things are going to change. or happen not quite the way that you expected, and you're gonna wanna update it. So the plan itself, it needs to be a living document. We're not just gonna drop it down and then that's it, It's not a mic drop and then you walk away. It's, doing the best you can to understand at the time and then working through it as factors that we looked at change. And then I think as far as you're concerned and the city council, it's gonna be a document that's gonna help you guide rezoning request and development and infrastructure expansion for the city. Again, we talked about infrastructure and development, they go hand in hand. We want to plan for those so that the city can, make its investments, look at, different, looking at impact fees now, right? Understand what those are, what your systems are really going to be in the future, what kind of capital investments you're looking at, and how that's going to relate to the type of development that you have. And, when it comes to rezonings, which again, I think can be some of the most emotional things that you look at as a planning commission, and then they get kicked to the city council. One of the primary points of this is to look at future land use and get kind of a broad understanding of what type of land uses you want to see in different areas. So then you can clearly communicate that to the development community when they come looking, to develop whatever it is they want to develop. It'll be a clear communication between the city and them, what's expected. And then when you get that rezoning request, right, and it's a room full of emotion and people, then you can feel a little more calm and confident because you'll have this plan in front of you and you'll be like, okay, I remember we sat down and we decided this, right? You're not deciding things on the fly. We looked at this last year when we were updating our plan and we decided that this general area, was going to be this type of development generally. Now this isn't just a guidance document, it's policy, it is not a regulation. The zoning regulations are that, but this gives you, guidance when you're looking at those rezonings. And so that's what we want. We want to give you confidence that you've thought through these things so that when they come to you, you feel good about the decisions that you're making. And those decisions are reflective of the plan, that's publicly put out there so that people understand kind of what that vision is. I don't know that I always show people these charts that show, the different population that's proposed to or projected, I guess, to happen in Northwest Arkansas. There's always some people that think, well, we can just, again, stop growth or whatever. And I think I feel like we're past that in Northwest Arkansas now for the most part, but it is real and it is happening. It's not a fabricated thing. So I won't go into this deeply, but in this PowerPoint will be available if y'all want to look at it later. But you can see just really quickly the areas that are growing very fast in the state of Arkansas, and Benton County is the fastest growing county in Arkansas, about 7% faster than Washington County. And then you have Craighead near Jonesboro, and then Saline County, which is like the Benton Bryant area outside of Little Rock. But it's interesting to see kind of where the population is growing and, where it's declining as well in Arkansas. And then just the population as well, like how many people actually live here. Again, we have a huge population cluster, both in our area in Northwest Arkansas and in Central Arkansas. And the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning, they keep good records on the percentage of growth of all the cities and the counties within the area. Now this is several years old now, but again, everybody's growing very quickly. You have land cover that's changed. This is just kind of a simple map of developed versus undeveloped area. I just think it's kind of interesting. So this was 1992, when the census population of both counties was 210,000. And then you have 2016. And just the difference in the amount of land, right, that is switched over to development. And just thinking through what development patterns that you decide on today are going to have as far as the impact of how your city looks, you know, as you move forward into the next decade or two. I know you probably all heard the statistic that we have roughly 30 people a day that are moving into the Benton and Washington County area for the past 30 years. These are some things, this is a slide I stole from, I didn't steal it, with his permission. I took it from Tim Conklin at Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning, and I know he worked with y'all on your last update. But I do think there's some important things here, and I asked him for these because I think it's good things to keep in mind. You know, kind of what are we planning for, right? We're going to be we're planning for growth in households and employment. I think that's important. You know, Arkansas, a majority of the money that cities have to run on is from sales tax. That's not something that everybody always knows, right? A lot of property taxes go primarily to school districts. There is some property tax that comes your way. And of course, there's more complexity in the way cities run than that, but it is something to keep in mind. So as a city, you want to plan for, you know, sales tax producing businesses as well. And you want to have places for people to work, right? The more people that can live and work in your city, kind of better quality of life for everyone, and your community becomes stronger. Planning for local and regional infrastructure systems through regional cooperation and planning partners. I think none of us live in a silo, but, you know, especially with, you know, all the discussion about water and wastewater and things, you know, you take wastewater right now, or you will, I guess, to NACA, which is a regional plant, right, that serves many multiple cities. So you're putting into that regional system, and then you send wastewater, you know, through Centerton system, and then ultimately to Decatur, right? So all these things are interconnected, right? Makes it more complex, but just having the knowledge that everything that you do, all the road systems that you have, they all link to somewhere else, right? So when we go through this process, we're going to be talking about the city of Highfill, but we're also going to be looking, you know, around the borders of the city of Highfill and understanding what is happening in all these cities surrounding us. We want to know what their master street plans say, right? Where they're going to be connecting in the future. If they have trail systems, we want to know where those are going to be, right? You want to be part of that regional network because we live in an area that has, you know, a very regional economy. Planning for complete and connected systems, right? We want people to be able to get places on the street. We want people to have sidewalks so that, you know, they can walk as well as drive. We want people to have parks where they can go. You want to have, again, these complete and connected systems. You don't want just isolated development here or there that's disconnected from everything. And then we want to plan for safe, livable, and healthy neighborhoods, cities, and a region. And then I think this, where we put building cities and communities, each development is an important piece. I think that is something to keep in mind. You know, as the Planning Commission, you're used to seeing things coming to you on a development by development basis. And it's easy to think of them, you know, just as, you know, subdivision A or subdivision B, but each development is an important piece of what your future city is, right? And so we want to keep the same mindset with that, right? That each development has stub out streets to the surrounding property, right? So that people can walk from one development to another or drive without having to get back out on the main road, right? Things like that, to just keep in mind, you know, that everything is connected. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure sometimes from developers or the public to look at things in a very, development by development basis. And while it makes sense, it's not really in your best interest to do that. Okay. So real quick, just so you know, there's a legal basis for what we're doing. There's enabling legislation at the state level, that says the city council can establish a planning commission. The planning commission shall adopt a planning area map, and review community study, and then you may adopt a land use plan and master street plan and community facilities plan. If you have subdivision regulations, you must have a master street plan. And if you have land use plan, you must have, if you have zoning code, then you must have a land use plan. And again, these are so that you have plans that you are implementing as you go. You're not just making reactionary decisions about what, people can and can't do with their property. I'm not going to read the municipal planning statutes to you as much as you probably want me to, just so you know they're there. So the planning commission role in this, is going to be something, again, we'll be back multiple times to talk to you at certain junctures of this. I think you do have a very unique role. We're going to want to talk to the public. We're going to want to talk to the development community. We're going to want to talk to business owners within the city. All these people are stakeholders, but you do have a big role to play because you're attuned specifically to development and what is happening, because you deal with the current development, right? The new developments that are coming every day, and not just what they are, but what the reactions of the public are to those, and what you see come about each time one is introduced. So we've talked a little bit about what the plan provides. I think we may have covered just about everything as I was talking. Let's see. Rational basis for decisions, consensus, an avenue to plan for the city you want, not just react. I do think that a form of public input that we have that goes with this planning process can help to develop unity and trust between government and its citizens, and I think that's important, right? It is definitely a relationship, I think, between local government and the citizens that live there, and the better communication you have, just like any other relationship, the better everything goes. Again, you're going to have something that tells developers this is what we want in our city, right? And then that's a known going in. And then some of this, you have avenues of funding and grant opportunities that are just simply not available if you don't have the plans in place. And so that's helpful. So again, really quick, this is not a zoning ordinance. It sets out municipal policy. It's going to be action oriented because we want to figure out how to implement it, right? It's long range in nature, although we'll be talking about short, mid, and long range things. Should guide planning decisions. And then it also provides a defense against litigation as a city. So these are the steps that we're going to go through with the project kickoff, which is tonight. We've had some previous meetings just with staff to kind of start gathering data and things, but this is our kickoff with you tonight. We're going to look at existing conditions and analyses of what's there. So right now we're looking at what the infrastructure is that they're pulling demographics for the city, understanding what development you have on the table, now, and what you foresee is coming in the future. So looking at everything that's kind of existing today. And then the next time that we talk, I think we'll probably be working on visioning and working on kind of like a mission, goals, and objectives exercise, where we start to try to capture the high level direction of things that you want to do, things that you think are important, areas of the city that you think have specific attributes that should be looked at, that sort of thing. Okay, and I'll show you an example of all these things here in just a second. Then after you have that, that's kind of your guiding framework, right? And then we're gonna move into the plan development itself, where we're gonna look at future land use and master street plan. And then kind of a concept plan for a more downtown or city center type area. And in all those are gonna be very hands-on things. Like there are gonna be nights where we have tables out here, right, with big maps, you know, huge ones, like 12 feet by 6 feet, spread on the tables with aerials so that you can see everything. And we're really gonna get down there and look at the land uses. Because you have a future land use map right now, and while there's nothing wrong with it, it's very broad, right? There's just whatever, 80% of the city is just residential, and it's just one residential category, right? So there's a lot of things that could happen there. And it doesn't address specifics. And so that means if you're not addressing things in some sort of specifics, then it means like one of two things. Either everything that you get, you're gonna say, well, this isn't exactly what we thought. And so, no, we're not gonna, rezone it because you're looking too narrowly. Or what usually happens is it's way too broad. And so you don't have the tools to ask for something different in different parts of town, where you may want residential in this part of town and this part of town. You may, through this process, we may decide this part of town may need to have very different types of residential than this piece over here, because of the terrain, because of the existing character of the houses that are there, because the land's already parceled up, and we're gonna be looking at all these different things, right? And you want your land use map to reflect that kind of nuance, right? So that you're able to address that later. Community engagement, that's gonna be throughout the project, really. But we will have one very large, public input meeting once we have a draft plan put together for people to react to. And that's where the public will come in too, and they'll be looking at big maps, they'll be drawing on them, and we're getting all sorts of input, on what makes sense, and then maybe there are gonna be things that need to change or adjust some from what, we envisioned. And then through that public input, then there'll be some, changes and updates to the plan, and then that plan finalization, and then adoption. And then at the very end, we're gonna have a code review and recommendations piece. So we talked about implementation, so we'll have this plan, and then we're gonna look at your code, your zoning code, and we're gonna say, okay, well, you envisioned these really cool things for this downtown area, right? But you don't have any zoning categories, right, in your existing zoning code that would allow someone to even build anything like that, right? And so that's what we're gonna say. So like, you need to create a downtown zoning category, right? And it doesn't have to be super complicated, but just pointing out things like that so that we can make sure that if there are barriers in your existing code that keep you from being able to implement what, has been envisioned by the city, then you'll know what they are and kind of what the priorities are for getting them rectified, if that makes sense. So we talked a little bit about this. So this is the existing comprehensive land use plan. And I know it's a little bit hard to see. I think there's probably one over there on the wall too. But you can see a lot of it is just the yellow color, right? Well, there's the giant airport in the middle. But besides that, you have a lot of just residential area, both in the city limits and within the planning area. And I think a lot of that is the nuance that we're talking about. You also have just like one commercial category and one industrial category, and I think that there's some nuance in there as well. You may want to have more neighborhood commercial areas, and you may want to have areas where you're looking to attract, a grocery store, something larger in size. And so, and all those are the things that we want to look at. Demographics, we'll be pulling demographics. I just grabbed a few things, yesterday and today. I do think it's always interesting to dig into demographics. The bad thing about them is that they're always a little bit behind. This is 2023 data, from the American Community Survey that the Census Bureau does. So it's a little bit different than what it was. I'm sure, you know, the world has moved on. Things cost a lot more than they cost 2 years ago for a lot of us, including housing, and other things. So you have to take it all with a grain of salt, but it is interesting, to understand kind of what you have in your community, and the diversity of it, and, yeah, just things that make up your community. One of the things I thought was pretty interesting is, like, you know, number of housing units in 2023 was 742, right? And I know that you've had multiple subdivisions that have what, well, more than 1,000 lots altogether since then. I mean, yeah. So I mean, things like that, just understanding the perspective, and again, like the rate of change, I think is really important. And we'll talk about that, you know, more in depth as we go. Visioning and goals. So I just pulled a couple different ones that I was looking at, from different cities that we've done before. So you have a mission or a vision. This was for Cave Springs. Oh, why is this Prairie Grove up there? But this one was for Cave Springs. You have kind of an overarching mission, and then they had goals, and then you have objectives underneath those goals, which you can see the objectives get really, you know, pretty specific about how you want to go about achieving your goals, and all of your goals are tied to your mission. I lost my mouse, sorry. Okay, this one is Prairie Groves. So this was their mission statement. They just did their update, I guess, like a year ago. We worked on their plan. And then their goals. So just so you get an idea of kind of what we're going to be looking at, you know, specific to your city when we get to that piece. The land use plan and master street plan. So future land use categories, again, this is something I think that we want to look at some different things maybe than you've had before. This is an example from Cave Springs, you know, your neighbor just down the road. When we redid their comprehensive plan, again, we looked at a lot more different categories than they'd had previously, but we felt were more reflective of the character of these different parts of town. And it honestly gave people a lot more comfort, I think, than they'd had in the past, because they could see that things were being reflective of that. So we'll have, you know, residential category just like you have now. We'll be looking at different densities and things within those areas, but you may see something different, you know, that is not something that you've had before that really defines specific areas. So this was in Prairie Grove, and this was a very specific part of their town. It wasn't their downtown proper, but an area adjacent to that. They kind of had its own vibe that was pretty different, honestly, than other parts of town, and had some mix of uses, not just single family. Again, try to reflect that. And when we do this, we'll try to have pictures. Again, I think that graphics and visuals can go a long way for, you know, people understanding what it is that we're envisioning. So we'll be working with a lot of that as well as we go. And then this was their downtown area. So you can see that we just have a lot of different things. The other thing I think is important is looking at recreational and open space areas, so you can understand how those interconnect. You know, we talked about we're going to make a connected city with complete systems. So we want to be able to visually look and say, okay, well, we know we have a park in this part of town, right? Then you see this whole area over here where there isn't anything. And I'm like, so then you start thinking, okay, well, maybe we need to plan for that, you know, and how are we going to plan for that? Is that something that's going to happen with development? Or is it something, you know, that the city is going to pursue on its own? And these are conversations, you know, that we're going to have. And then civic space, it has its own, thing as well. You have schools, city buildings, fire stations, you know, all those type of things. And again, I think it's good to give them their own categories, not usually because you're growing them, but so that you can understand what civic buildings you have and services you have and where they're located in your community. And again, when you're looking at these big maps, understanding where you might need things in the future. And then there will be some agricultural and rural residential. There always is, and nobody's looking to remove that from the cities. So I always like to say that up front because I think it's important. The other thing we'll have is mobility plans or master street plans. So the one on the left is one we did for Russellville. A couple of years ago, they had very specific improvements and intersections they wanted to work on. They integrated into that master street plan. The one on the right is Cave Springs. Something that's very notable to me when I look at your existing master street plan is that you don't have any proposed connections. Now, we're not talking about local streets, right? Hopefully the local streets are gonna build with, you know, individual subdivisions. And then, you know, connect to one another as another subdivision comes in. But these are gonna be what's called collector level and above. And you can see with Cave Springs, you know, they have Bentonville on one side, Rogers on the other, Lowell and Springdale. So all the dashed lines on here are proposed collector and above streets, connections that they feel like need to be made. Some of them are brand new streets and some of them are areas of realignment of existing streets, you know, where you might have like 4 90-degree turns, you know, in an existing road that, you know, used to just be a county road. And that didn't matter so much, but now when you're connecting multiple jurisdictions, it does. So the white dashes indicate ones that are in Cave Springs or their planning area. And then the dashed ones that have the black dashed lines in them, those indicate things that are connections that they're making with Bentonville's master street plan or Rogers' master street plan. Does that make sense? So again, thinking about these connected networks, right? And how we want to make sure that we're tied into that. Because there's a lot of, not just sheer transportation, but a lot of economic benefit, right? From being well connected, you know, to your neighbors. For you as a city, as it grows, can make it, you know, just a better place for people to commute from. I think something else that Tim Conklin from Regional Planning likes to say that I think is, well, I don't know if it's really funny, but it's like, you know, like today is like, the traffic will never be better than it is today. Like it's only gonna get worse, right? Like, just like you're never gonna be younger than you are today. I think that's just a given in Northwest Arkansas, right? And we want to be cognizant of that because it's the quality of life for people that live in your community or who want to come and visit your community, right? For them to be able to go, you know, to and from as best we can, right? Because we know there's going to be congestion. We want to do the best we can to plan ahead. And then also just fiscally, it can be nice because then you have other people, you're connecting onto infrastructure other people are building that they're funding. And not just you, right, to get you from point A to B. Just another example. We'll be looking at traffic counts and things. Again, I will say with master street plans, they're not usually, a lot of times we're not setting super specific alignment. We're just saying that, you know, somehow somebody has to get from point A to point B. Maybe it's not exactly like this, but we know there needs to be some connection here. So just keep that in mind. We don't have to figure out the exact alignment of roads. We just need to know where people need to connect. And then with that's going to come what's called cross sections for these different types of streets you have. This is an example of a downtown collector, right? So it might look very different than a collector that you had that linked, you know, between, you know, you and Bentonville or something. You know, if you're downtown, then you're going to want to have streets that have smaller driving lanes and you have parking on both sides so that people can access, shops, and you have wider sidewalks, right? So that's your street cross section there. And it may look very different than other areas. So that's something else we'll be talking about. For community engagement, we're gonna create a website, for your city, for this plan. This is an example of one we have for Prairie Grove. We haven't made yours yet. But we will be making it soon, and it's gonna be a landing page throughout the whole project, okay? So that if people want to know what's happening, what the updates are, they're gonna be there. Usually the way we do it is we find some way to connect it to your site. Like you may have a direct link on the front of your web page or however you want to do it, right? So that people can always go there, and then the city doesn't have to deal with the hassle of uploading new maps and things as things are drafted. We'll take care of all that, and people will be able to go there. And then the city can very easily put the web address out, on social media or however you communicate with people. There will be a public survey, and we'll host that there, as well as just have a direct link to the survey. We'll talk about that more coming up. And then we'll have, information on input meetings, all the exhibits and maps, that the public sees here. They'll be able to go there and download their own copy as well, and that sort of thing. This is an example of different housing types and things that we'll talk about probably soon is what we're going to have in the survey. We do want to get an idea of what's important to people in your city and what they think they want or don't want to see in the future in different areas of the city. And that's all. I think I've covered everything. And I guess open up for questions if y'all have any questions for me.
Do you have a specific time frame and that all this whole thing lasts, or is it kind of a moving target?
It can be a moving target. I think it's hard to do them in less than 9 months. If you're going to get good public involvement and public input and, talk with stakeholders. I'd say generally they last roughly a year. From like when you start it, today to like, hopefully you'd be adopting it, in February of next year. But it can happen faster if it needs to. And I haven't really gotten specific direction on that. And so that's something we need to talk through kind of what, I can talk to the mayor about that. I think he wants it to happen, as quickly as possible, but then also happen, well. We don't want to rush through things.
I think public involvement's important.
Yeah.
I don't want to rush it.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, I think regardless of whether, it's a planning commission meeting where I'm here, I was thinking about this earlier today, I'll go ahead and plan to give Jeremy a monthly update, kind of where we are status wise so that he can convey that to y'all. So even on months where, we may not have something to do in person, you'll have that information so you'll always know where the project stands. And I would say as far as the schedule, I think probably you'll get some information soon. I'll meet with the mayor and understand kind of where those key meetings will be. So I think the more quickly we can kind of get that established and out there, then, y'all can plan for it and the public can have an idea of roughly when, within a couple months span, different parts of the plan may be happening.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the only other thing on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from November 26, 2024. It was a regular planning commission meeting. If you guys can take a couple minutes, they're short, just review them and make sure we're not missing anything. All right, do you all see anything that needs to be updated, changed? That look good?
Which could be.
Can I get a motion to approve the meetings as they stand or meeting minutes as they stand for November 26, 2024?
I'll make the motion.
Second,
Wayne,
yes,
Steve,
Yes.
Megan, yes, so the meeting minutes are approved. And are there anything else that we need to talk about? Jeremy, anything? Alright, well then, if I can get a motion to adjourn the meeting, we'll do it.
move that we adjourn,
Second.
All right, Wayne,
yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Megan is a yes, meeting is adjourned. You want me to sign this or do you want to?